In other words, you're bringing it into manifestation. There must be, because in existence, really, what is it? But you have to experience your life and you have to connect at every moment. And that's a hard thing to do. That's called real living. And I think we can derive happiness from almost anything.
Welcome to the Fearless Happiness Podcast, where we showcase phenomenal individuals who have overcome serious traumas, life obstacles, and challenges to find their own path to fearless happiness. Listen as Max Naist invites guests from all around the world to share their experiences and spread strength, hope, and faith. This is the Fearless Happiness Podcast, and this is Max Naist.
All right, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this world today. This is Max from the Fearless Happiness Podcast. Today, I have a special guest with me, Jonathan Taylor. What I like to do, Jonathan, is have you introduce yourself to my audience, like who you are, what it is you do, and then we're going to rock and roll.
I'm a classical concert artist. Type Jonathan Taylor guitar into Google. You'll find out what I do. I have 32 albums. I toured all over the world and been playing, recorded all the masterpieces, or most of them, of the classical guitar repertoire, as well as transcribed very new and heretofore never adapted pieces, like The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, for example.
Oh, I love it. On the guitar?
That's correct, on the solo classical guitar, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. And the themes, American folk music of the 19th century, Duke Ellington, jazz people like George Gershwin, and ragtime like Scott Joplin, and even psychedelic music of adapted guitar, even though that sounds very strange and as if it wouldn't work, and it does. So that's who I am.
Well, thank you for being here with me today, Jonathan. And, it's what I'd like to do is have you go back, as far or as you want and tell my audience, like, what got you into the guitar and what are some of the challenges growing up that you faced that brought you to music? Because, like, listening to what you're saying, like the different genres you could play, I mean, I told you before we started, right? Like, I'm always fascinated by the guitar and the music that comes, but like classical guitars are they just blow my mind because how just this, the music you hear come from the instrument itself and just watching your guys' hands all over the fretboard and right. So talk about how your childhood was, what brought you to music, and some of the challenges you went through to get you to where you are today.
My grandmother was a silent film organist and played around the house. She was extremely successful. All the notables of that period, meaning Charlie Chaplin, Lon Chaney Sr., Man of a Thousand Faces, fan of the operas, His son was Lon Chaney Jr., just as the Wolf Man. And my grandmother played many gigs with Harry Houdini, the great illusionist or magician, and was actually at that LA premiere in, what was it, 1930, in downtown Los Angeles with Einstein and Chaplin. My grandmother was in that audience, if I'm not mistaken, and was playing. I don't know if she played that as a gig that day. It premiered City Lights, the Chaplin's film. But so she was playing around the house, and I, 4 or 5, would start picking out melodies on a little ukulele because my little fingers were too small to, play the guitar. And I think most musicians learn by ear initially, and then later on they expand. And so you learn how to read music. So I was inspired by Andre Segovia at the age of 16. Before I'd listened to his recordings, but then at 16, I saw him in person live at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, downtown Los Angeles. And I was so enamored with his ability to do 2, 3, 4 parts at one time. You didn't need a 4-man group, did it all himself, and also the beauty of the music. and that it was different than the pop stuff, which was monophonic, meaning most pop players are either playing chords or playing lead lines. And uh, Segovia's music and the music of the classical guitar, which is very difficult, was polyphonic, many voiced. And so that brought me to studying seriously, making commitments, practicing, having discipline, and then studying with the great artists of the time period. I was a private student of Pepe Romero at his home for 5 years. I was a student of Chris Parkening in master classes, Frederick Node, Joe Pass, jazz I dabbled in for a bit. And so that brought me to knowing I wanted to concertize and concertize all over the world, and then also put together a large solo classical guitar catalog. And that catalog um, is comprised of extremely difficult, extremely obscure, extremely popular pieces that are usually not or not always played with just one solo classical guitar.
Wow. So it sounds like you have put in the work, right? Like learned from some very amazing musicians, right?
Yeah. You know, I would say when people say, "Oh, you had a dream," and all that, and I kind of go, "The dream is for free. The hustle is sold separately, batteries not included."
I love it. I love it. Right.
So the idea that when people say, "I want to dream" or "I want to be," I go, "Well, don't worry about that crap. Just do the work." Uh,
Right.
know, oh, I want to be a fireman. Okay, what do you know about pyrotechnics? What do you know about it? Where's the manuals? Where's the, way to find that? I want to be a mathematician. Well, you better start figuring then, right? Now,
Right.
you got calculus from Isaac Newton at 23. You've got, many branches of that. So to me, it's all about creativity as well. Is when people say, "Well, you've done so many albums. When do you stop?" I go, "When I die." Because what's the
Right.
point? They asked Segovia. He was like 92. When I knew him, he was 85 or something. I don't know. And so now he's younger than that. You just look older when you're a Victorian.
Right.
So
Right.
you've grown up in that area, you don't have the same life extension that we do. So somebody asked him, "Oh, uh, what is it? Don't you want to stop touring?" And his response was the perfect response. "And do what?" Meaning, okay, what am I supposed to do now? Watch television all day, or
Right.
the pasture, or so when people say, "What are you doing?" I go, "I'm always transcribing, I'm always arranging, I'm always learning a new piece." I was looking through Claire de Lune the other day. I'm going to do that. I'm going to learn that one. I've actually never played that one before. And so I'm going to learn that. I was just reading through it yesterday.
Right. Well, you're just proof that if you really love what you do, and you never get tired of it. Right. So, like one of my, I wouldn't say heroes, but one of the guys I looked up in the jujitsu world, right, was Helio Gracie. He didn't stop at 92 years old, right? He kept doing, he did jujitsu until the day he died, right? That's how much he loved it, right? And it was always trying to tweak it and refine it
And
and
weren't we talking about how I saw Bruce Lee's exhibition there at Long Beach?
no, mention that since you just brought
I,
that up.
the one with the 1 inch punch, that one?
Oh, you were at that one?
Correct. And also that I have a copy of the Jeet Kune Do, manual. I've read through it,
Love.
and you're the expert on that. I'm not. Correct. I'm not that. And be like water.
Right.
So I can also tell you about James Coburn studied with him, the actor.
Hmm.
I go, oh, he was a buddy and a student of Bruce Lee.
There's a few actors that were students, like John Saxon was also a student.
Makes sense, right? Because
Yeah.
he did, what do you call it with him? The film, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
I think it was Enter the Dragon or
that's
one of them,
the
you know.
drag. Yeah. And John Saxon was really big back in those days.
Right. He was a big star back in the 60s and 70s from what
Oh,
I
he
remember.
was freaking everywhere. Talk about working. He was working all the time.
But
Or he did, this or that, right?
right. And that's what I love, like you being here, right, is showing my audience, right? Like you're never too old to stop learning, or if you love something, you never really want to stop doing it, like playing the guitar or doing music in your case. And right.
And if you stop growing. So I'll say something. People have this idea, oh, that person is perfect. And I go, well, I don't ever want to be perfect because that means I don't go anywhere. How freaking boring is that?
Right. I agree.
And who am I? I have to grow. Oh, I've stopped my education. I go, what does that mean? Like you're going to just do these activities now. And I go, you always have to be pushing the envelope, getting out of your comfort zone, doing something that's new to you. It doesn't matter what it is. If you've never ridden a horse before, you know, do a horse, get on top of a horse and ride around a little bit on a horse. It's new to you.
Right.
And so it doesn't matter if you don't get out of your comfort zone and don't try like all the different styles of music that I've tried. I go, if you don't do that, and I go, then you're just like this stagnant block that's like this, and you don't want to be that. Oh, I heard a very prominent Asian musician. I won't say his name. A great art. He's a great player. There's no doubt about it. But
Uh,
because he was born in that um, culture, that he had this idea of perfection always, and he said he had it since his youth. It's not his fault; it was inculcated into him. And, number one. If you're not number one, commit suicide by 13. So he would say, "Go for perfection." I go, "That is the most boring thing in the world." I go, "There is no computer that couldn't play more perfectly a piece or more perfectly or faster." And I go, and it has no soul and it's dead and there's nobody there. And so
right.
he realized as time went on, he's older now, that, I realized just to communicate this emotional musical experience, I go, yeah, I knew that when I was 10. You know, and so perfection, what does it mean? It's just you want to have uh, a musical statement and communication to the audience from your heart. I tell people say, "Oh, I could technically the feats," and I go, "The real reason you like my music is because you can tell there's heart there, not the pyrotechnics, you know,
Right. Pyrotech, that's all for show anyway,
yeah,
right?
not the somersaults, and
Right. Well, I agree, right? Because you can tell when a song really comes from the heart, right? Or artists that have been around like yourself for many, many years and are still popular because the audience knows when you're playing that piece that is a part of you that you're giving to us as the audience. And there's no better music than that, right?
Yeah, and I've even got, on Pandora. Yeah, a lot of people think Spotify is the big whoop-de-doo, and I go, Pandora actually has a larger audience base because it was around for 10 years before
Wow.
Spotify. Spotify isn't big, it is, and you're on all that and everything. But at the same time, I go, well, Pandora, there, I have this category, established artists, and I go, I had to work for years to get that category because it's based on sale, it's based on numbers, and
Right.
how, and it takes time to build that up. You get Nielsen ratings. A lot of people don't know that Nielsen, who they associate with the television stuff, right? That
Right.
Nielsen rating of the star or something. And I go, well, it's actually all media. It's in music, it's in everything, not just broadcast on television. So saying that because if you keep your nose to the rhinestone, it's always drops in the bucket. It's always drip, 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 drip. It's not the big, I won the lotto. You know, I go, that's not going to happen. The
Right.
By the way, the people that win those, they always give the money. They always lose the money because they, not qualified to manage money, right?
You hear it all the time, right? Like they won the big one, and then years later, not totally a lot of years later, but you'll hear that they lost everything because they didn't manage it correctly,
Like
right?
$20 million, some big sum.
Right. But I look at kind of what you do and what I do, right? The reason I lasted as a substance abuse counselor for so long is because I just like the music, right? I come from the heart. When I want to connect, I don't connect with the client and look at him like he's a number and then on to the next, right?
Right.
He or she is a human being. And how can I best serve this person? Because they have just come to me for help, right? And if I treated them like that, they would be like, why am
Right.
I even here? Right.
You just pour them a drink.
I, right.
Or
Yeah.
what did they say in AA? Don't let them start drinking without you.
Right. Or it's like, pour me another drink. Right.
So
Like,
that so I'm gonna ask you a question because I'm gonna raise that question to you because you're a counselor like that. So I have because we've all known people that have what everyone calls alcohol problems. Everyone's known somebody like that.
right.
Uh, and I go, well, let's look at that a little bit further. So Winston Churchill drank from the moment he got up in the morning until the moment he went to sleep at night. And when I say he drank, I go, he'd have champagne in the morning and then a shot of schnapps and then a port. And then mid morning, he'd have a beer, a couple beers. And then lunch would be served. And of course, he'd have a martini with his lunch, maybe two martinis. So now it's only noon. All right. And by
Right.
the time he got to 5 p.m., I go, Christ, this is like a barrel in a pirate store. I mean, it's like there's so much liquor that you can't believe it. So then he would take a nap because he said, I won't be good unless I have my 4 o'clock nap every day. And then he'd be out till midnight. And why? And I go be conducting affairs of states. And then when he's running the war, that's another thing too. So this is what I say to people. I go, oh, Eleanor Roosevelt hated him. My God, Franklin, Winston's just a drunk, he would say. And so my response to that is I go, really? What does that effing mean? Because he ran a war. This is how he lived his life. He lived to be 93 or 94. All right.
Right.
And I go, what does all this mean now? You see? So I think we have to take a little bit different look at that because he certainly was functioning.
Right.
He wasn't in the gutter. He wasn't begging, for $1.50 for a taco.
Right.
So, I mean, those ideas that somebody's an alcoholic, I go, I'd like to know the meaning of that. Because in this case, now I'm sure there are other people that, they can't take a drink or they'll just, wind up in a Tijuana jail or something.
Right.
Because they're crazed and they get out driving and, do things like that. But when I think about Winston Churchill, I go, what can be the objection to his drinking?
Well, here's my opinion on that, right? Like, even if I knew Winston, I would not be able to call him an alcoholic, right? That comes from that person. But obviously, right, he ran a war and the alcohol didn't affect his decision making, right? And you said it perfect. There's some of us like me where if I take the drink takes me, and I end up with silver bracelets sitting in a jail somewhere going, dang.
Good. And that is not good. And that's a problem.
Right. And there's different levels. Like you and I have both, I've known people that handle their alcohol very well, right? Like if I drank what they drank, I wouldn't be sitting next to them. Pretty just because we got to remember it's all physiology too, and what happens and how the alcohol, what it does to a person's body, right? Where some are worse than others,
Yeah.
right? And so like me, I cannot recreationally use alcohol or drugs because then I end up always, like you said, somewhere going, dang, how'd I get, not knowing how I got there.
Yeah. And some people are like that. I have a buddy that is a lawyer and he drinks like a fish. And years ago, he was addicted to fentanyl, Oxycontin.
Ooh. Oh,
And
that's
he then started smoking pot and he got rid of his addiction. Now, why do I mention the pot? And I go, because I have watched him get younger. It's the strangest thing I ever said. The polyphenols in the marijuana.
right.
I go, this guy drinks, but he does so much pot that the polyphenols balance him out. And I go, he's got the most beautiful skin you ever saw. And I go, you wouldn't believe what he looks like. And I go, he should look like some, rotting corpse somewhere. It's an interesting thing. And I'm not trying to say yay or nay to any of the alcohol or the marijuana stuff or any of that.
Right.
Just saying, well, that's just the truth of what I've seen. And see how this is a musical interview?
Right. Well, we're getting to there, right? Like, but you're right. Like, well, if you looked at me and Jonathan, and someone said that guy was an intravenous drug user, what would you say?
Not, no, I'd say no.
Right. So I was for many, many years, right? Meth of all drugs
And that's,
is,
I don't know a lot about that, but that's supposedly a very bad one.
it's a very bad one. And if you ever look up people like before and after, you're
Yeah.
going to come back to me and go, Max, you got lucky,
Yeah. And look like a person.
right. But here's the thing, right? This talk, what we're having actually, well, is perfect, right? Because in your time as a musician and all, I'm sure you've come across so many different personalities.
Oh, sure.
And I bet you I could ask you, Jonathan, like, who was without giving like who was your worst, like the ones you didn't think they could play, but once they got their instrument going, it was like they never had a drink or a drug, and it was just like,
All right, that's true.
you know what I mean? So
Play real music when you're loaded. So when people say that person was, on some drug and that, and I go, yeah, but he's not playing Bach. He's playing something simple.
right.
Playing, he's playing like a lead line or a melodic line. And I go, he's not playing the Bach chaconne in D minor. Uh, I go, can you do that while you're on drugs? That'd be impossible. Nobody can do that. I've never
Right.
seen anybody do that. And I go, no way. Uh, it's just the coordination between the mind and the fingers and that, and the complexity of it is so much. I go, well, it's not like you're just strumming chords and playing lead lines.
Right. Exactly. Right. Like you said, Bach or something like that. No one that I know would be able to play that kind of music, being the rock stars they think they are, right? Drinking like, some of these guys
Right.
do, or
Right.
I know I wouldn't be, but so
Right.
when we get back to you and your music, what were some of the, like, what are your favorite things growing up as you were learning music that you learned from other people, right? Because you and I just talked about be a lifelong learner, right?
Sure.
This is why I believe you're such an awesome musician, and you're still here today making all this music.
Thank you.
How does that, like in earlier days, like your teens and stuff, like when did that really start to, like, it clicked with you, like, if I'm going to be a good musician, I got to keep doing, like you said, doing the work.
Well, one of the big compliments I got in my youth when I was about 10 was I overheard a neighbor lady say to my mother, my God, he's the most disciplined kid in the neighborhood. And I heard that. And what did I do? I go, well, like I said before, it's not a dream. It's all about the labor. Now, when you learn that, that can be very depressing. I always tell people I became a man when I was 14. Why? I go, well, I listened to all the electric stuff and I loved it and I loved, and then I went out and bought one of the pedals and I realized that it was just an artificial nothing and that I was going to have to really know things and that it would be hard work. It's very depressing. In other words, when you see the work before you, and I said, oh, at 14, I was giving my mom money for the rent. You know, not the rent, it was the mortgage actually. So, and so, it might even been just $10 or something. But of course, mortgages back then were really cheap.
Mm.
So that could have been 1/10. So I realized at that age that it it was what I call a maturity call. That now you have to come into the world like a quinceañera, right?
Right.
Quinceañera. And I go, well, what they're saying is now you're in the world. That's, one of the messages. And that was kind of, I'll call it a wake up call, a knock on the head, a knock on the back of the head. And so I realized that I had to work very hard. And I committed and made oaths to myself that I would achieve benchmarks, right? Certain
Right.
levels. Like you with the belts are a measure of learning certain skills.
Right.
I go, well, now this person knows these skills and that skills. And I go, and they're compounding the skills. And then pretty soon they're up at the black belt in these larger, more important belt where you recognize to go to be that. I go, well, that person knows. I got a buddy that's a black belt. And I go, uh, I go, don't screw with Carlo.
Right.
I go, and he's the most peaceful person. He hates bullies. I go, he's the most peaceful guy in the world. But my buddy Carlos is, I go, he's a black belt. I go, he would defend me to his death. I know him. Uh, and so, uh, so those benchmarks spur you on. And will you have dry spells or yes. So at a certain age, I realized that I needed to have instruction from the greatest artist in the world. So I sought out Christopher Parkening, the great classical guitarist. And he actually called me when I was 16. And people say, how did you just get his number? And I go, it's lost in the mists of time and my mind. I don't It's how did you meet Pepe Romero? And I go, sometimes I can't even remember how it happened. It was
Right.
like and manifestation, right? You manifested it in the universe. So I knew I had to do that. I was a private student at Pepe Romero's house during my college years and a little bit after. And by that time, I had gotten to master the big pieces, Chacon, Land, all the hard pieces. At that age, you want to get tackle the big toughies, right?
Right.
You know, do that. So that was a big focus. I learned every masterpiece of the Grand Overture, Recuerdos, Leanda, all the big masterpieces, Spanish masterpieces and Bach masterpieces, especially since they're great pieces.
Well, I love a lot of the Spanish, like
Oh,
you said, masterpieces that the music is just so beautiful. Like you get lost in it, right? When you're
great. Yeah.
right. And, you know, before we interviewed, after you agreed to be on the podcast and stuff. So I looked you up, of course, and listened to your music one day for like an hour. And I'm just like, wow. Right. And then, but being so interested, right, I started looking up these other classical guitars.
Sure.
And I found my wife going, it's dinner time. You need to get off the computer. Right. But I'm like, you got to listen to this, right? Because it's stuff like that that it brings you to a whole different place and time sometimes when,
Oh, yeah.
and a lot of the time, 99.9% of the time, like when I was listening to your music, it's like to a better time, right? Like when things were simple and right, easier compared to like nowadays, right? Where you see all the different politics going on and the craziness, right? And
Now,
so, and
I'll tell you something interesting. You froze there for a minute. Am I?
no, you're good.
There's
Am
some
I still
freezing
frozen?
going on.
I know for some reason the internet has been
Can you?
acting up. You're fine on my end.
Okay, I'm good now. So it was just froze for a minute. So I'll say a couple things about some of those Spanish masterpieces. So Isaac Albéniz, whose music has been adapted for the guitar, you know Leander, also known as Asturias, uh, and other Spanish composers. Isaac Albéniz, for example, never composed a piece for the guitar in his life. All of those pieces you hear are piano pieces and then were transcribed for the guitar. But they sound so natural on the
Mhm.
guitar, everyone thinks that they're originally written for the guitar, which is, makes sense. And then there's another great Spanish 19th century composer, Francisco Tárrega. He wrote the great tremolo study, Recuerdos de la Alhambra, and many other, and he wrote the Gran Jota, which is, God, probably one of the five hardest pieces in the world play. And so, excuse me. So many of the pieces that we think of as being originated on one instrument were not. They're adapted. A big portion of the classical guitar's repertoire are transcriptions.
That's awesome. Then you think about, so those like the guitar, right? Everybody associates that guitar with classical guitar music, right? But you just gave us some education where that is not even true. It was for piano playing,
Yeah,
correct?
right. And I'll tell you a story about Bach and the piano. Okay, so here's a piano story. So Bach never traveled more than 50 miles from where he was born. He was a Kapellmeister, which means a choir conductor in Kärnten and Weimar in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Germany didn't exist yet.
Okay.
So Bach, his buddy, said to him, and in those days you get in a carriage, and it's a rough ride on unpaved roads. He said, "You've got to come hear this new instrument. It's called the pianoforte." Piano actually means soft, and forte means loud. And the name of the instrument is actually the soft loud because it had both dynamics. It's been shortened colloquially to piano. So Bach got in the care. You've got to come hear this instrument. Bach, of course, was an organist, and that was his main instrument, even though he wrote for all the chamber stuff and the lute and other things. His instrument as a player was organ. And so he travels to this other church where they have a piano. And so somebody starts playing it for it. He hated it. Now, everybody, when I tell this story, they go, "What are you talking about, Jonathan?" I go, "Oh, he hated it. It had no sustain. They have I'm not sure if they have the pedals yet to sustain the sound where you hit a note and then hold the pedal and it
Oh,
rings, note ring longer.
right.
Hit the note and it decays. I'll get into that part of how the guitar and piano are similar in a minute. But so he hated the piano, and I always laugh and I go, "Do you know that most of Bach's stuff is transcribed for the piano? I mean, a big portion of it, right?
Right.
So it's being played on the instrument that he hated." So I'll talk about the piano and the guitar for a moment because they're both, and I'm going to say something that will sound controversial and strange to people. They're both percussion instruments. And people say, "What do you mean by that?" And I go, "Well, the guitar is not bowed like the violin or the cello, right? Viola.
Right.
And the piano is you press a key down and a hammer goes like this. A hammer goes like that.
Right.
And the harpsichord, it's plucked. The string is plucked. So In actuality, a stringed instrument is bowed. And even though there are strings on the piano and strings on the guitar, those are plucked or hammered. Think about the hammer. Think about when you go like that on the piano. Well, that's the same thing you're doing on the guitar. And what are you doing? I go, you're actually, it's a percussion instrument. Why? Because you are moving this object and it's making a sound and it's not being bowed. So, in a way, as a perspective, the piano and the guitar both are percussive instruments. And why is that important? I go, because it tells you that you have to find a way to create the illusion of sustain. And that's one of the great skills in classical guitar is to make that sound flow, as you were saying earlier, that flowing or that it's and how do you do that? And I go, part of it's an illusion because the moment you hit the note, it starts to decay in its sound, right?
Right.
And add a bow on it, I could keep it even or even, make it louder, right? And so with the piano, of course, you have the pedals that you put on to sustain it. Well, now, why is that important? I go, because if you cannot create the illusion of ligado, meaning that connection of one note to the next, you can never have that beautiful line. And if you'll hear, I'm playing a piece where you can hear the accompanying, bass notes, let's say, that melody is singing out kind of above everything. And that's a real skill because it's sustaining and pushing things forward. So there's a
And
lesson in music lesson.
well, I love it. Right. So I'm always learning, and I love that you're giving me this and my audience this education about music. And you're right. That's the first time I've ever heard of the piano and guitar being percussion instruments,
Yeah,
right? Which,
about percussion is,
yeah, everybody thinks it's the drums or something you smack with something,
yeah,
right?
it's yeah. So they're just a way to understand and categorize the instrument. Like the old instruments in the Baroque orchestra, they were made from catgut, and that was always getting out of tune. And think about how cold it is, and they would light the fires in the church. I mean, it was like a not very nice environment. And the what's called excellent instruments didn't occur until the 18th century, meaning ones that stayed in tune. So if you were to hear Bach's St. Matthew Passion played at that time period in the Bach's being alive, uh,
Right.
which is 1685 to 1750, his life actually defines the Baroque era. I go, well, if you listen to it, I go, it'd be so freaking out of tune, you wouldn't believe it.
You'd be like, who's this guy?
Yeah,
Right.
you'd be going,
Man, so this obviously for me and the audience has been an amazing time because we're getting not only to get to know you, Jonathan, but getting this education on music, right? Which people might be telling me, going, well, what does this have to do with a lot of the other podcasts, right? But here, music is what brings the world together. I think a lot of it, you
a
know.
story about how music can save a person's life and heal them. I was playing in Bombay. They call it Mumbai now, and that's the north part of India, not the Punjab, but below it, I guess. And I'm playing at the National Theater. And what is the National Theater? I go, it's like the Lincoln Center of that country.
Okay.
So, the Lincoln Center on the East Coast, I go, it's the same thing. It's in the same shaped building. It's almost like a replica. And there's a replica of Albert Hall in Madras, India, that I played in. But back to the Bombay one. So I'm playing there. I'm playing a concert, and so now I get back. Now that's kind of near the end of the tour, and a month later, maybe I'm back home here in California. I'm in Newport Beach with my manager at his office there, and I'm sitting there. He goes, "Jonathan, we got a letter." I go, "Okay," and he goes, "You won't believe it." And I go, "Tell me." So opens the letter, and a man from India had gone into the concert and was going to kill himself. He was going to commit suicide. and he was going to commit suicide. And right before, wait a minute, he hadn't gone in yet. He was going to kill himself. Then he saw the poster or something, advertisement or something, and he went and got a ticket and went into the concert and decided not to kill himself after he heard the music. And so I told my manager, I said, that was worth the tour right there. That
Absolutely.
was worth the whole damn kit and caboodle.
Right.
And I go, music can literally heal a person. And I believe that. I don't think that's just a bunch of metaphysical bullcrap. I think
Oh,
it's absolutely true. I think that it affects us in some way, whether the mystic might say it hits the chakras, or another person might say it relaxes the neural system and your alpha waves slow down. You could have 1,000 explanations that go, whatever it is, it's helpful.
I agree 100%. Right. And I don't know about you if you don't remember, like in the 80s, where, a lot of the politicians were wanted to shut down certain bands because of the heavy metal and they think the messages.
Yeah.
But even some of them have helped people like change that direction, like you said, in case they're on their way to go commit suicide, they heard a certain song and then they were like, I'm not going to do it because that
And
song just saved my life. Right.
the right does any politician or any human being have to tell another person they can express freely as long as they're not like committing violence on another person? I go,
Absolutely.
yeah, I go, the whole point of the First Amendment is that you cannot attain to wisdom without the freedom to think certain thoughts in your own way and to speak them. And otherwise, you're just mouthing other people's ideas.
Right.
And so I couldn't agree more. I think that you're right, and that heavy metal or whatever type of music, if it speaks to you and says something, there's a reason for it.
Absolutely.
If that's
Hey,
the thing that speaks to you, then you should do it.
right. Because that's what I say, whether it's that or
Anything. Yeah,
country music,
sure.
classical music, whatever, right? Like it could be opera. If it speaks to you in your heart,
Yeah.
don't let anybody tell you different, like,
And
but
there's a reason why you're hearing it that way. Why do we feel these emotions? Why do we synchronize with a certain style? Or maybe it's a lyric of a piece, or maybe it's just the instrumental, what?
absolutely.
And I go, well, whatever it is, that's helpful and good for you. So keep it up.
Well, and that's why, in talking to you, and I know that music has been probably, tell me if I'm wrong, a big healing factor in your life, probably at some of your low times in your life, right? You had your music.
I think I have a center that, and musicians, especially classical musicians, do more than average. And the reason why is I go, well, there's a wonderful song um, from Barbie, What Was I Made For? And I sometimes tell an audience, I know what I was made for. Do you know what you're made for?
Right.
And if you don't know what you're made for, find out. Because if you don't find out, you'll be grasping at straws. You'll be doing things that are not helpful to you.
Right.
And if you know who you are, I think I knew who I was very young. And I think I had discipline and other things. And I was willing to do the work because nobody's willing to do the work. The hard
Right.
part, if I want to learn Spanish, if I want to learn French, I have to do the work.
Absolutely.
Or if I want to learn how to be an electrical engineer, I have
Right.
to Maxwell's equations. I have to. I go, well, that's how you understand it. Is he's the one that codified that? So
Right.
yeah,
That's why I think about my dad and a very good friend of mine who's no longer with us, but he was a computer science and electrical engineer major when he was in school.
right, great.
Right. And he showed me some of these equations, right? And like I would look at one page And I would go to put it down. He goes, no, keep going. And he would, like, 4 pages later, he goes, that's one equation. And I go, his name was Brian. And I'd go, Brian, there's something wrong with you, teasing him. And he would just go, but I love it, right? Like,
Well, without Maxwell and the electromagnetic equations, we wouldn't be talking on this phone because we wouldn't have been able to harness electromagnetism. That electricity is magnetism, and magnetism is electricity. That's one of the what should we say, the discoveries. Yes, Benjamin Franklin, we know him. He's out with the kite and the key and all that, and his little son with him. And I go, yeah, well, he thought that lightning was electricity, and he was right. But I go, but he didn't do what later generations did. Maxwell and actually John Clerk Maxwell made the equations, but he was inspired by the experiments of Michael Faraday, who was an Englishman. And this is about 18, maybe 20 or so, or maybe a little earlier. And I go, well, without that, you don't have, there's a book entitled The Man Who Changed Everything. And why is that? And I go, well, you don't have anything. You don't have an electric motor. You certainly don't have television and a cathode ray tube. And
right.
you certainly don't have that image translated. By the way, that was Philo T. Farnsworth for the cathode ray tube. And he got the idea because he was a farmer and he had rows of, you plant things in rows. And he looked at those rows and thought about the light being put in rows. And that's how he came up with some of the cathode ray tube idea. So saying about the engineers or about electromagnetism or about that subject, I go, well, without Faraday and Maxwell, in a way, the American Civil War from a 10,000 year pull the camera back history in the future
Right.
of the 10,000 years ago, the most important thing that happened in the 19th century, it will be Maxwell equations, and the American Civil War will look like a local skirmish. It'll look like nothing important. And it'll look, and when they see, this is when they discovered, how to apply the electricity, that changed the trajectory. Cars, planes, all sorts of things you wouldn't have had without that.
Right. Music, right? Amplifiers and being able to.
Music is a perfect example of that. So even when I was a boy of 16 and heard Segovia, and he's in the Dorothy Trent, like, I'm still having a hard time hearing him because he hated amplification, which I disagree with. Amplification is wonderful.
Right.
I go, well, that's how you can reach 20,000 people. So otherwise, they can't hear you. So,
Right.
but even at that age, with your ears being really perfect, right? Even at that age, I'm just straining to hear it. And amplification would have easily gotten rid of that.
Right. Well, and now you get to use all this we just talked about in your music so that more people can hear you and get to know you through your music. Right. Which is, like I said, I'm not musically talented, but I have the love for people that know how to play the guitar, the classical guitar, or piano, or just any of that. To me, I get in awe when I listen to the music, right? Because, like you say, that's like, it's not just a melody or a note, right? But it's really like heartfelt, just the heart was poured into it, and you can tell, right?
Right.
Even opera, right? I'm not a big opera guy, but when I listen to it, I mean, the ranges of the voices, the music, and like just everything put together, you're like, wow, man, to me, it's amazing.
It's so easy to listen to my music. Just type Jonathan Taylor guitar into Google. Jonathan Taylor, make sure to put guitar, otherwise you'll get a black football player. And although I look like a black football player, and he's a great football player, he's a great, fine athlete. I hope I can meet him one day soon.
Right.
But just put Jonathan Taylor guitar into Google. I've got a zillion things, and I just probably going to have a new record thing going here. Is I had a meeting yesterday, so I've got a new distributor I'm looking at, perusing contracts late next week, and so that'll be even larger, I know, because of what they're going to do. So.
I want to get a sign. Well, I would say I want a signed record, Jonathan, but now it's a signed CD or
Just, a file and yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Right. Well, it's been an amazing time, but I want to ask you some of the questions that I love to ask, like you did in the pre
Please.
interview. But knowing I Fearless Happiness, which is the same name as my podcast and the book I wrote, right? What does fearless mean to you today? And
Without
how does that show up in your life?
without fear. That if you fear is a distorter. It distorts and shuts off access to the other options or possibilities. That if you have fear, and it may be very justified, if a car's coming at you at 60 miles an hour, you got to move out of the way.
Right.
But if you freeze, you're sure to get hit. So you have to have, there's a saying, fear, you have to have, you can feel the fear, but do it anyway.
Right. Love it.
Do it anyway.
That leads me into the next question. Happiness. See, as I put a Y in it, what does happiness, knowing I put the Y in it, mean to you today? And how does that show up in your life?
So I think that the universe, you're literally connected to everything that exists, but you're unawares of most things that exist. You are blind to it, dark to it. And in a sense, existence is pure joy. That if you can connect to something, that is the realization of your life. In other words, you're um, bringing it into manifestation. It there must be, because in existence, really, what is it? But you have to experience your life, and you have to connect at every moment, and that's a hard thing to do. That's called real living. And I think we can derive happiness from almost anything.
Yeah, I agree. Right. I love it. Well, this has been an amazing, amazing time, Jonathan. I've learned so much from you but what I want to ask you is if our audience, my audience, wants to get a hold of you, find your music. I know you gave us one way, Google your name,
Mhm.
right? The musician, but how can they get a hold of you or how can they find your music?
There's like, if you just do that, they'll be somewhere. I have an email. I'll tell you what, I'll give out my email. So, TAYPROP, it's an abbreviation of Taylor Properties. So if you go TAYPROP at sbcglobal.net, you can message me. Also, you can message me on Instagram. I'm on Instagram.
Love
J
it.
Classical Guitar Mastery on Instagram, and just message me and I'll get a message that way.
Awesome. You heard that, everybody. Well, like I said, it's been an amazing time, Jonathan, but you're not off the hook just quite yet, right?
Okay,
Now I get to ask you my favorite question I ask of all my guests, and it
please
goes like this. What is the one piece of advice you could give my audience to help them grow as human beings and become better people?
keep endure. It doesn't matter how many times you lose or fail. You might have 90% of the time you fail. I go, yeah, but you only need the 10%. So what's the diff? So if you, uh, if, if something comes in and presents itself as an obstacle to you and you can't get over it, under it, around it, or through it, then you have to keep throwing something, as they say, on the wall. You have to keep throwing it on the wall and see if it sticks. And why is that? And I go, because there's nothing else in life. What else is there? What, lay down, play dead, and do what? So people say, oh, I lost this deal. The next one.
Right.
There's more to do in life. And you are fortunate. Think of those people who can't try, like if they're crippled, you know,
Right.
all their limbs, are paralyzed, right?
Right.
Think about how lucky you are. You can walk, can breathe, eat. And so I think that perseverance and continuing to try is the main thing in life.
I love it. Boom. You heard that, everybody. Wow, Jonathan, thank you for being here with me today. Thank you for joining me. You heard him, everybody. If Jonathan made you think, if he taught you something, if he made you smile, and my famous, if he made you go, I like that. Please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star review so more people can find the podcast. And again, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this world. This is Max from the Fearless Happiness Podcast. Until next time.
Are you tired of being weighed down by life's traumas and struggles? Join the Fearless Happiness lifestyle and let us guide you toward a brighter future. Explore our past podcast episodes and get a copy of the Fearless Happiness book to ignite your inner strength. If you or someone you love is battling addiction or facing challenges related to unresolved trauma, know that we are here for you. Visit maxnijst.org, maxnijst.org, and take the first steps toward finding your fearless happiness. Thank you for listening. This has been a production of Fearless Happiness.